The Tampa Bay Area.
You are my sunshine, my only sunshine. You make me happy.
Table of contents, the Tampa Bay Area.
You'll never.
This is a brief but comprehensive overview of Florida. Part 1. Flagler Implant. And the history of Florida. With visiting and touring information, geography, history, attractions, and other points of interest.
Dr. Sydney Soclof. drsydney22@gmail.com. 2022. Narration by Dr. Sydney Soclof.
Zoe Phonemes.
And Nathan Koltove. For a more complete discussion of YouTube navigation, please go to this video using the link here.
The Tampa Bay Area. This is the flag of Tampa.
The metropolitan area population of the Tampa-St. Petersburg Clearwater Metropolitan Statistical Area is 3.2 million, making it the second.
The Greater Tampa Bay Area has over 4 million residents and generally includes the Tampa and Sarasota metropolitan areas. This is a Landsat 8 image of the Tampa Bay region.
The population of the Tampa-St. Petersburg Clearwater metropolitan area is the 17th largest in the United States and the second largest in Florida after the Miami-Fort Lauderdale-West Palm Beach MSA. Here are various regions of Florida.
The various coastal regions of the state have been given distinctive names. The Tampa Bay Area is often called the Sun Coast. This is the Central Florida region, comprised of the two subregions of the Tampa Bay and Greater Orlando areas. However, some consider Central Florida to be just the Greater Orlando area. This region of Florida has a population of 8.4 million out of a total state population of 22.6 million. This is a list of the top 10 metropolitan areas of Florida. The population figures are from the 2020 U.S. Census. The total population of Florida in the 2020 census was 21.5 million, and the 2023 estimate is 22.6 million. This is a continuation of a list of the top metropolitan areas of Florida. We see that the Tampa Bay Area is in second place after the Miami Gold Coast region. The Orlando area of Central Florida is in third place, followed by Jacksonville in fourth.
These are the population numbers of the 10 most populous counties in Florida. Note that the 3 most populous counties comprise the Gold Coast region of Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties.
This is the population of the largest cities in Central Florida. The city of Tampa is the largest at 385,000, followed by St. Petersburg at 258,000, and more distantly by Clearwater at 117,000.
Note that of the total metropolitan area population of over 3 million, only 385,000 or just 12% resides in the city of Tampa. This is Central Florida. The Tampa Bay Area is generally considered to be Hillsborough, Pinellas, and a small part of southwestern Pasco County. Manatee and Sarasota counties are often considered to be part of the Tampa Bay region.
This is the Tampa Bay Area of Hillsborough, Pinellas, and a small part of southwestern Pasco County. This is the Tampa Bay Area of Hillsborough County, with Tampa and Pinellas County, with St. Petersburg and Clearwater.
The Tampa Bay Area of Hillsborough County and Pinellas County rank at number 4 and 6. Together, the population of the two counties totals 2.5 million. Tampa's economy is driven by tourism, healthcare, finance, insurance, technology, construction, and the maritime industry.
The Bay's port is the largest in the state, responsible for over $15 billion in economic impact.
The history of the Tampa Bay Area.
Calusa.
The earliest instance of the name Tampa, in the form Tampa, appears in the memoirs of Hernando de Escalante Fontaneda, who spent 17 years as a captive of the Calusa and traveled through much of Peninsula Florida. He described Tampa as an important Calusa town to the north of the Calusa domain and possibly under an oath that chief.
These are the Calusa paramouncies in Florida. Of these, the Tacubaya, Pahoy, and Macazo polities were in the Tampa Bay area. The Calusa people were an important tribe of Florida that dominated the southwest coast from Tampa Bay to the southernmost top of mainland Florida, together with all the outlying keys, and extending inland to Lake Okeechobee. They also claimed authority over the tribes of the East Coast, north to about Cape Canaveral.
The Calusa also claimed authority over the tribes of the East Coast, north to about Cape Canaveral. They were farmers to a limited extent, but we better noted as expert fishers, daring seamen, and fierce and determined fighters, keeping up their resistance to the Spanish arms and missionary advances after all the rest of Florida had submitted.
In 1567 the Spaniards established a mission and fortified post among them, but both seem to have been discontinued soon after, although the tribe came later under Spanish influence. About this time, they numbered nearly 50 villages, from one of which the city of Tampa takes its name. By 1600, they were carrying on regular trade with Havana, Cuba. By the constant invasions of the Creek and other Indian allies of the English, they were driven from the mainland and forced to take refuge on the Florida Keys. More were evacuated to Cuba, where many of them died.
When Spain ceded Florida to Great Britain in 1763, the last remnants of the tribes of South Florida went to Cuba. Those few that remained on the mainland were absorbed into the Seminole tribe. However, their language and culture survived up to the Second Seminole War's close.
Fort Brooke.
Fort Brooke was built at the mouth of the Hillsborough River by Colonel George M. Brooke in 1824.
This is a map of the region around Fort Brooke in 1852.
This is an oath map of the region around Fort Brooke in 1852. Fort Brooke was a military post established at the mouth of the Hillsborough River in present-day Tampa. In 1824, its original purpose was to serve as a check-on and trading post for the native Seminoles who had been confined to an interior reservation by the 1823 Treaty of Moultrie Creek.
The Treaty of Moultrie Creek, signed in 1823, provided a reservation for the Seminoles in Central Florida. As settlement in Florida increased, pressure grew on the United States government to remove the Indians from their lands in Florida. To the chagrin of Georgia landowners, the Seminoles harbored and integrated runaway blacks, and clashes between whites and Indians grew with the influx of new settlers.
After passage of the Indian Removal Act in 1830, the U.S. government attempted to relocate many eastern tribes, including the Seminoles, to Oklahoma, causing yet another war, the Second Seminole War.
In 1832, the United States government signed the Treaty of Payne's Landing with some of the Seminole chiefs, promising them lands west of the Mississippi River if they agreed to leave Florida voluntarily. Some Seminoles accepted relocation, but many rebelled and did not. Fort Brooke was the principal port where Seminoles started their forced relocation to Oklahoma, known as the Trail of Tears.
Many of the Seminoles left at this time, while those who remained prepared to defend their claims to the land. White settlers pressured the government to remove all of the Indians by force if necessary. And in 1835, the U.S. Army arrived to enforce the treaty. The Second Seminole War began at the end of 1835 with the Date Massacre, when Seminoles ambushed Army troops marching from Fort Brooke, now Tampa, to reinforce Fort King, now Ocala, killing or mortally wounding all but one of the 108 troops.
The Day Battlefield Historic State Park preserves the battlefield of the Second Seminole War, where Seminole Indian warriors fought soldiers under the command of Major Francis L. Dade. In 1835,
between 900 and 1,500 Seminole Indian warriors effectively employed hit-and-run guerrilla tactics against United States Army troops for 7 years.
The Second Seminole War was the most expensive Indian war fought by the U.S. It lasted longer than any war involving the U.S. between the American Revolution and the Vietnam War. The war ended after a full decade of fighting in 1842. The U.S. government is estimated to have spent about $20 million on the war. At the time, it was an astronomical sum equal to $500 million today.
In the end, 3,800 Indians were forcibly exiled to Indian Territory west of the Mississippi, while a few others retreated into the Everglades.
The government gave up trying to subjugate the Seminoles in the Everglades redoubts and left few even 100 Seminoles in peace. However, some scholars state that at least several hundred Seminoles remained in the Everglades after the Seminole Wars.
As a result of the Seminole Wars, the surviving Seminole Band of the Everglades claims to be the only federally recognized tribe that never relinquished sovereignty or signed a peace treaty with the United States. At the end of the Second Seminole War in 1842, almost all of the Seminoles were forcibly exiled to Creek lands west of the Mississippi.
This is the territory of the Seminole Nation and Indian Territory in the years 1856 to 1866.
Fort Brooke was a military headquarters and port during the Second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842. The village of Tampa developed just north of the fort during this period, and the area was the site of a minor raid and skirmish during the American Civil War.
Fort Brooke was an obsolete outpost that was sparsely garrisoned after the Civil War. The U.S. Army decommissioned the fort in 1883, and it was open for homestead applications.
Today, there is nothing left of the fort. In the 1980s, during the building of a parking garage in Tampa, the site was excavated, leading to the discovery of artifacts and remains of U.S. soldiers and Seminoles.
This is a detailed map of downtown Tampa, showing the site of Fort Brooke under a parking garage in Tampa.
When the pioneer community living near the U.S. Army outpost of Fort Brooke was incorporated in 1849, it was called Tampa Town, and the name was shortened to simply Tampa in 1855.
Florida became the 27th state in 1845. 4 years later, in 1849, Tampa was officially incorporated as the village of Tampa, home to 185 civilians and 974 total residents, including military personnel of Fort Brooke in 1850. Tampa was reincorporated as a town in 1855.
In 1878, the largest city in the state was Key West, with 10,000 population. St. Augustine's population was only 2,100, and that of Tampa was less than 1,000.
During the Civil War, Florida seceded along with most of the southern states to form the Confederate States of America, and Fort Brooke was defended by Confederate troops.
The Anaconda Plan was a strategy proposed by Union General-in-Chief Winfield Scott for suppressing the Confederacy at the beginning of the American Civil War by a Union blockade of the southern ports and an advance down the Mississippi River to cut the South in two. In 1861, the Union Navy set up a blockade around many southern ports to cut off the Confederacy, and several U.S. Navy ships were stationed near the mouth of Tampa Bay.
In 1862, the gunboat USS Soclof sailed into Tampa Bay and opened fire on Fort Brooke, which returned fire. The Soclof withdrew after a few hours, and the Battle of Tampa caused little damage. During the Battle of Fort Brooke and the Battle of Ballast Point in 1863, Union forces inflicted severe damage to the city's economy when, under the cover of an oath bombardment of the fort, troops landed and destroyed two blockade-running ships that had been hidden upstream along the Hillsborough River.
On October 18, 1863, a Union task force of 85 soldiers found the Scottish chief and Cadale, celebrated blockade runners, hidden in a remote anchorage in the Hillsborough River, near this site, and set the ships afire. Owner skipper James Mackay had slipped through the federal blockade 6 times.
The alarm reached Tampa town, and the mounted rebels caught up with the raiders at Ballast Point. 3 Unionists and 6 Confederates were killed. This is the only Civil War skirmish fought at Tampa Bay. In 1864, Union troops landed again and took Fort Brooke largely unopposed. They destroyed much of the fort's facilities, confiscated military supplies, and then left the desolate town after 2 days. Ybor City is a historic neighborhood northeast of downtown Tampa, founded in the 1880s by Vicente Martinez Ybor and the cigar manufacturers.
Ybor City is named after Vicente Martinez Ybor, who brought the cigar industry to the city. This is Ybor's first cigar factory. Circa 1900, Ybor City was settled by thousands of immigrants, mainly from Cuba, Spain, and Italy. For the next 50 years, workers in Ybor City's cigar factories rolled hundreds of millions of cigars annually. The cigar industry employed thousands of well-paid workers. This helped Tampa grow from an economically depressed village to a bustling city in about 20 years, giving it the nickname Cigar City. In the peak year of 1929, over 500 million cigars were hand-rolled.
This is Tampa in 1887. Ybor City was incorporated into the city of Tampa in 1887, becoming its 4th ward. This was despite protests from Vicente Martinez Ybor that annexation would hinder his cigar operations.
Ybor City grew and flourished from the 1890s until the Great Depression of the 1930s, when a drop in demand for fine cigars reduced the number of cigar factories, and mechanization in the cigar industry greatly reduced employment opportunities in the neighborhood.
This process accelerated after World War II, and a steady exodus of residents and businesses continued until large areas of the formerly vibrant neighborhood were virtually abandoned by the late 1970s. This is a map of downtown Tampa. Ybor City is just to the northeast of downtown. This is a detail of part of downtown Tampa, showing the location of Ybor City.
This is a map of Ybor City. Florida's Cigar City flourished as the cigar industry drove Tampa's early 20th century economy, and employed an immigrant workforce that forever changed a quiet southern town into a booming multicultural metropolis.
Henry Bradley Plant, a railroad and a great port make a great city. The vast expanse of Tampa Bay made for a great port. All it needed was a railroad to make Tampa into a great city. That was done through the efforts of Henry Bradley Plant.
Henry Bradley Plant, 1819 to 1899, founder of the Plant system of railroads and steamboats, was born in Branford, Connecticut, the son of Betsy Bradley and Anderson Plant, who was a farmer. He was the descendant of John Plant, who emigrated from England and settled in Hartford, Connecticut, around 1639.
When Henry was 6, his father died. Several years later his mother married again and took him to live first at Martinsburg, New York, and later at New Haven, Connecticut, where he attended a private school.
His grandmother, who hoped to make a clergyman of him, offered him an education at Yale College, but he was impatient to begin an active career. At the age of 18, he got a job as captain's boy, deckhand, and man of all work on a steamboat plying between New Haven and New York.
Among his various duties was the care of express parcels, which he organized effectively. When the parcel business was taken over by the Adams Express Company and later transferred from steamboats to railroads, he went along with it. After a few years he was put in charge of the New York office of the company.
The Adams Express Company was a competitor of Wells Fargo and Company. It was incorporated in 1854 and was the paymaster for the Union Army during the Civil War.
In 1853 Plant's wife, Ellen Elizabeth Blackstone Plant, to whom he had been married in 1842, was ordered south for her health. Several months were spent near Jacksonville, then a tiny hamlet. He became impressed with the possibilities of the future development of Florida.
At that time, Jacksonville was the second largest city in Florida, with a population of 7,000.
The largest city in the state was Key West with 10,000 population. St. Augustine's population was only 2,100 and that of Tampa was less than 1,000.
Most of the state's population was in the north, adjacent to Georgia and Alabama. The southern part of the state was mostly an uninhabited area of swamps and wilderness.
There was no Miami as such. Instead there was a fort built during the Seminole Wars, on the Miami River, known as Fort Dallas, with perhaps 100 settlers in the area.
Plant became the general superintendent of the Adams Express Company, for the territory south of the Potomac and Ohio rivers. In 1854, in the face of great difficulties, Plant successfully organized an extended express service in this region, where transportation facilities, although rapidly growing, were still deficient and uncoordinated.
As the Civil War approached, the directors of Adams Express feared for the confiscation of their southern properties. They decided to transfer them to Plant.
Plant organized the Southern Express Company with the southern stockholders of the company in 1861 as a Georgia corporation, and became president.
His company acted as agent for the Confederacy in collecting tariffs and transferring funds. In 1863, following a serious illness, he took an extended vacation in Europe and returned by way of Canada.
Plant railroads.
This is a map of the routes in Florida of the Southern Express Company. After the Civil War, Henry Plant bought several small bankrupt rail companies serving the South and put them together to form the Plant system of railways.
A definite challenge was standardizing track, stations and equipment. Plant made the rail gauge uniform, so switching tracks at the end of each line was no longer necessary, ensuring less cumbersome travel.
The Plant system provided service from Charleston, South Carolina, through Georgia, Florida and Alabama. Connections were also provided to New York and the entire Northeast.
The railroads of the South had been practically ruined after the war, and later many railroads went bankrupt in the Depression of 1873. In this situation he found his opportunity. He was convinced of the eventual economic revival of the South, and bought at foreclosure sales in 1879 and 1880 the Atlantic and Gulf Railroad and the Charleston and Savannah Railroad.
With these as a nucleus, Plant began building a transportation system along the southern seaboard.
20 years later this system included 14 railway companies with 2,100 miles of track, several steamship lines, and a number of important hotels.
In 1882 Plant organized, with the assistance of northern capitalists, including Flagler, the Plant Investment Company. This was a holding company for the joint management of the various properties under his control. He reconstructed and extended several small railroads so as to provide continuous service across Florida.
By providing better connections to the north, Plant gave Florida orange growers quicker and cheaper access to northern markets.
The Plant Steamship Line. Tampa, then a village of a few hundred inhabitants, was made the terminus of his Southern Florida Railroad, and also became the home port for a new line of steamships to Havana.
Plant recognized that his railroad would be a greater success if combined with steamship and steamboat service. In 1886, the Plant Steamship Line was organized.
Plant steamships ran from Tampa to Key West, Mobile, Boston, Halifax and Charlottetown in Canada, and Havana, Cuba.
The Plant Steamship Line went from Port Tampa to Cuba, the Bahamas, Jamaica and New Orleans during the winter season of Plant's Tampa Bay Hotel.
In the summer season, the steamships were also used for service between Boston, New York and Nova Scotia.
At about this time Henry Morrison Flagler was extending his railroad line down the east coast of Florida, first West Palm Beach in 1894,
and then to Miami in 1896.
Plant and Flagler informally divided Florida between them, with Plant concentrating on the west coast down to Tampa, and Flagler along the Atlantic coast down to Miami. The Plant Hotels.
Plant's first wife died in February 1861. In 1873 he married Margaret Josephine Luffman, the daughter of Martin Luffman of New York City, who with one of his two sons survived him.
In the late 1880s Plant began to build hotels at strategic locations along his rail lines in Florida.
These are the Flagler Hotels on the East Coast, and the Plant Hotels extending from Ocala and Winter Park down to Tampa and Punta Gorda.
Plant had 8 hotels on the West Coast and Central Florida: the Ocala House, Seminole in Winter Park, Hotel Kissimmee, the Inn at Port Tampa, Tampa Bay Hotel, Hotel Bellevue in Bel Air, Hotel Punta Gorda and the Fort Myers Hotel.
This is an advertisement for the Plant Hotels.
The Tampa Bay Hotel was Plant's premier hotel for the accommodation of winter visitors. This was built in the style of a Moorish palace, and was an enormous hotel costing $2,500,000.
The subsequent growth in wealth and population of Florida, and other states tributary to the Plant system, made Plant one of the richest and most powerful men in the South.
The Seminole Hotel opened in Winter Park in 1886. This hotel had 250 guest rooms. Many people referred to it as the Grand Resort of Florida.
Guests of the Seminole Hotel were brought from the South Florida Railroad train depot via a horse car that traveled on rails.
Many of these passengers came to Winter Park in the winter months to escape the snow and frigid temperatures of the north.
In its early years, The hotel was able to attract many wealthy Northerners using luxuries such as gas lights and steam heating. The hotel featured a very large, beautiful formal dining room, many parlors, suites with open fireplaces, a barbershop, laundry services, and a long colonnaded porch.
Guests could take the elevator to view the surrounding area from the promenade on the top of the hotel.
For the entertainment of the guests, the hotel provided a bowling alley, a billiard hall, tennis and croquet grounds, and an orchestra for dancing.
Other activities included horseback riding, fishing, and sailing on Lake Osceola in sailboats and steam yachts provided by the hotel.
Along with neighboring Rollins College, the hotel and college brought luxury to the edge of the Florida frontier.
The original Seminole Hotel burned to the ground in 1902 and 1912. A second, smaller Seminole Hotel was built. The new hotel also is on the banks of Lake Osceola. This hotel was torn down in 1970.
The Hotel Bellevue was the last remaining grand historic hotel of its period in Florida that existed as a resort. It was built in 1896 and later renamed the Bellevue Biltmore.
The Bellevue Biltmore was a picturesque Victorian hotel on the Intracoastal Waterway in Bel Air, near Tampa. It closed in 2009.
The building was noted for its architectural features and extensive handcrafted woodwork and Tiffany glass. It was said to be the largest occupied wood frame structure in the world and was constructed of native Florida pine wood. The Bellevue Biltmore has hosted many famous people, dignitaries and world leaders through the years, including several U.S. presidents.
The hotel was closed in 2009 and was slated for demolition in 2015. However, a preserved portion of the Bellevue Biltmore Hotel was placed on hydraulic dollies and moved 230 feet.
The structure was placed on a new foundation, where it was restored and reopened in December 2018 as the Bellevue Inn, a boutique hotel.
In Plantsville, he attempted to prevent a partition of his properties to the value of about $10 million by forming a trust for the benefit of a great-grandson. But the will was contested by his widow and declared invalid.
This decision made possible the consolidation of his railroads with other properties to form the Atlantic Coast Line Railroad, now part of CSX since 1986.
Henry Plant's son, Morton Freeman Plant, 1852 to 1918, was vice president of the Plant Investment Company from 1884 to 1902.
The Tampa Bay Hotel.
Plant brought the railroad to Tampa in 1884. The railroad became the center of the economy, and many businesses located and flourished there.
From downtown Tampa, the railroad went to Port Tampa, where one could board a Plant steamship to Jamaica, Cuba, New Orleans, Bermuda, or other destinations.
A spur of the rail line brought the train up to the west front of the Tampa Bay Hotel, so guests could depart the train and walk directly into the lobby.
The Tampa Bay Hotel cost approximately $2.5 million to build and $500,000 to furnish, consisting of 500 rooms, some of which were suites of 3 to 7 rooms. It provided a degree of luxury never before seen in Tampa.
Most of the rooms had their own baths and all had electricity and telephones.
In addition, guests were surrounded by a varied collection of furniture, porcelains, Venetian-style mirrors, and sculptures gathered by Mr. and Mrs. Plant during their travels in Europe.
The Tampa Bay Hotel opened in 1891 amid wide fanfare and celebration. Henry Plant's dream was now reality.
The newspapers of the day described it as brightly illuminated, filled with sumptuous decorations, thrilling music and graced with turrets, domes and minarets towering heavenward and glistening in the sun. It was a Victorian palace.
The hotel was a lively place with balls, tea parties, and organized hunts during the winter social season. It was open seasonally from December to April in the 1890s.
Once a guest arrived at the hotel, he needed to be entertained. Guests went wild game hunting as well as fresh and saltwater fishing.
Water sports were also included like sailing, rowing, and canoeing. For the less adventuresome, there were bicycles, carriages, and rickshaws to ride around the property.
The hotel also offered golf, tennis, shuffleboard, billiards, and even a racetrack.
After the death of Henry Plant, the building was bought by the city of Tampa in 1904. It continued to operate as a hotel until 1932.
In 1933, the Tampa Municipal Museum was established in order to preserve the legacy of the Tampa Bay Hotel, becoming the Henry B. Plant Museum in 1974.
Today, the mission of the museum is to interpret the Tampa Bay Hotel at the turn of the century, and the Victorian lifestyles of America's Gilded Age.
In 1933, the Tampa Bay Junior College moved into the hotel, using the old suites as classrooms and offices.
Because of the large space afforded by the hotel, the junior college was expanded and became the University of Tampa.
Chapter 17. The Spanish-American War.
Tampa and the Tampa Bay Hotel played an important role in the Spanish-American War of 1898.
Henry Plant convinced the Secretary of War, Russell Alger, to allow Tampa to be the official port of embarkation for troops going to Cuba. His railroad and steamships helped transport troops to Florida and eventually to Cuba.
The Tampa Bay Hotel became the headquarters for the Army officers awaiting the order for embarkation. The generals planned the war campaigns from the hotel.
Officers and war correspondents stayed here in relative luxury, rocking on the veranda, sipping iced tea and planning and reporting strategies.
Clara Barton gathered supplies for the Red Cross and frequently went to the hotel.
The enlisted men camped in tents around Tampa and other Florida cities, fought off mosquitoes, endured stifling temperatures, wool uniforms, and boredom, while waiting for the signal to start the war.
Lieutenant Colonel Theodore Teddy Roosevelt and his cavalry unit known as the Rough Riders were stationed in Tampa.
A permanent exhibit in the museum is The Spanish-American War and its Tampa Connection, a timeline, photographs of military personnel on the hotel grounds, and artifacts of the period are also included.
The museum also features an audio tape of letters written by a young enlisted man, Henry Dobson, to his parents, describing his time in Tampa and Cuba during the conflict.
Tampa served as the staging area for the American troops invading Cuba.
Tampa was the most important port of embarkation in the Spanish-American War.
This shows troops embarking for the Spanish-American War at Port Tampa.
This again shows troops embarking for the Spanish-American War.
Recommended videos, the Tampa Bay Area. Recommended video, playlist, Tampa Bay Area. Recommended video, the Tampa Bay Hotel, Florida's first Magic Kingdom. Recommended video, the Tampa Bay Hotel, Florida's first Magic Kingdom. Yahoo.be web link 1445.
Recommended video, the Henry B. Plant Museum, a national landmark. Recommended video, the Henry Plant Show, 29 minutes. Recommended video, 10 best things to do in Tampa. Recommended video, things to do in Tampa, Florida. Top 50. Recommended video, Tampa's Beginnings, Fort Brooke. Recommended video, Tampa Overview. An informative introduction to Tampa. Recommended video, Top 10 Best Things to Do in Clearwater.
Recommended video, Top 10 Best Things to Do in St. Petersburg, Florida. Recommended video, Best Things to Do in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Recommended video, St. Petersburg, Florida. In-depth city tour.
Recommended video, Sarasota, Florida, top 10 things to see and do, top attractions.
Recommended video, Sarasota Top 10 Things to Do. Table of Contents, the Tampa Bay Area.
Recommended videos. Walking and boat tour of the Tampa Bay Area. For a street-level experience of the Tampa Bay Area, view the video walking tours. It's the next best thing to being there.
Recommended videos, playlist, Tampa Bay Walking and Boat Tour.
Recommended video, St. Petersburg, Florida. Walking to.
Recommended video, St. Petersburg, Florida walking tour.
Recommended video, Clearwater Beach, Florida, beach and downtown guided tour, things to do.
Recommended video, Clearwater, Florida. Downtown, walking tour.
Recommended video, Ybor City, Tampa, Florida. Walking to.
Recommended video, Tampa, Florida virtual tour, Ybor City, 4K.
Recommended video, Tampa Bay Boat Tour. Things to do in Tampa.
Thanks for watching. Please watch some more of my great videos.